Ok, chicos, hablamos un poquito sobre el futuro. El condicional es después. Entonces, hoy solo vamos a discutir el futuro. Ok. El futuro, usos y formas. The Spanish future tense is equivalent to the English will or shall plus a verb. So the future tense in English is I will go. Okay, we already know how to say I'm going to go, voy a ir, but we're going to learn how to use the actual future tense, which is I will go, which can often express the same thing, but is a new verb form to add to your repertoire. So the Spanish future form is not used to express politeness, as is the English future. In Spanish, this idea is expressed with the verb querer. ¿Quieres abrir la ventana, por favor? Will you please open the window? So I'm not actually literally using the future and saying, will you? I'm just saying, literally, do you want to? But in Spanish, that is the polite way to do it. So don't use the future tense for politeness in Spanish. Okay, we talked about this briefly in class. Most verbs are regular in the future tense, which is formed by adding the endings to an infinitive. There are some irregulars, but future tense is still, by comparison, easier to learn than other forms because you have the same set of endings for all of the verbs. So the ending for yo is e. So if I'm using the verb hablar, yo hablaré means I will speak. For the to form as, so tú entenderás, you will understand. A for la usted, usted vivirá, you will live. Hemos for nosotros, nosotros daremos, we will give. Vosotros, don't worry, you won't be quizzed over this, but your ending is eis, so vosotros devolveréis, you guys will return an item. And an for ellos, ellos ustedes, so ellos encontrarán means they will find. So all endings except the nosotros form have written accent marks. Darán, de comer, is the they form, so there is an accent, but llegaremos has no accent. That has to do with the syllabic content of the word. If a word has the right number of syllables, then you don't need to put an accent on. Darán, to keep the emphasis on the last syllable, I have to write in that accent, and that's why most of the forms have that. Okay, here's your irregulars. There are several, but notice that we can categorize them. So we have a set at the top, which is verbs where you're just taking out the E in the ending, and that's all that you're doing. So caber, the E disappeared, I get caber, and then I have to put the ending on, so the yo form would be cabre, for example. And so all of those first several verbs, all that's happening is the E is omitted. So yo abre, podré, querré, sabré, etc. Then we have these three, tener, valer, venir, where what I'm doing is adding a D. There are other verbs that are irregular too, by the way, that fall into these categories. These are the ones that I want you to know right now. So tener, I add a D. So I will have would be tendré. We will have tendremos, etc. So tener, valer, venir are a set. And then we have decir and hacer, which are a set. And what happens to these? They just kind of shrink. So dir and then the ending. So I would get diré, dirás, dirá, etc. And hacer goes har, so haré, harás, hará, etc. Okay. To quick recap what they all mean, to fit is written in because this is a brand new verb for you. Haber, you've seen before but only briefly, means basically to exist. So if I say habrá, I'm saying there will be. Podré is I will be able to, so poder means to be able to. Querer, to want. Saber, to know, facts or information. Tener, to have. Valer is to be worth or valued at, so valdrá la pena is it will be worth it. Venir, to come, so vendré is I will come to your house, for example. Decir, to say or tell, and hacer, to do or make. So keep in mind those three categories. Some of you might find that it makes it easier to keep track if you're just thinking of three categories versus memorizing all of these things independently. You have a bunch of forms where the E goes away, a few where you're adding a D, and then a couple that just shrink down. So decir and hacer just get short in the future. Yo les diré a qué hora saldrá el avión. I will tell them what time the plane will leave. These are two future tense verbs in the same sentence, and they're both irregular. So notice decir, just shrinking down the stem to dir, and then the ending salir, I'm adding the d to the verb, so I say saldrá for the plane. Ellos pondrán la maleta aquí. They will put the suitcase here. Again, poner, you add a D to the form and then put the ending on, pondrán. So that's how we form irregulars. They're very similar to the other forms. The endings are exactly the same for both regular and irregular, but now I just have this funky stem that I have to work with when I'm talking about the irregular verbs. So study these hard. Make sure you're doing something to memorize your irregulars. And the thing to remember for regulars is you keep the whole verb intact and then tack the ending on. As, a, amos, and an.